these might just be the best smoked chicken wings on YouTube. I mean, look at these guys. They are ridiculously crunchy, ridiculously juicy, and they're smoked. I spent months doing research and an entire weekend of testing. I guarantee you, these things are gonna blow your mind. There's 4 key secrets to them. Let me show you how I made them. So let's talk brining. We brine for 2 main reasons, one of them being adding flavor. Now, you can mix in all kinds of different seasonings. You can mix in some citrus flavor. You can mix in some apple juice. You can mix in any type of liquid or flavor or dry and wet herbs that you want and build a flavor profile. And because we're letting this sit for 12 to 24 hours, it's going to get a lot of flavor inside the meat. The second purpose is to retain moisture, right? We get that salt into the meat and osmosis happens and we retain moisture and you end up with a juicier product. Now, for this particular cook, I don't need to do this step. I spent a weekend testing without brining and I'll tell you what, I turned out some amazing wings, but this is gonna be the best wing on the internet. So I gotta go the extra step and brine it. So last night what we did 12 hours ago is I got a pot of water, I put in 1 cup of water in there and I brought it up the temperature and then I stirred in 4 tablespoons of Diamond Crystal Kosher salt. I warmed it up until it dissolved. Then once it is all dissolved, I poured in 3 cups of cold water. We wanna bring that temperature down. Now, in most brines, you'll see someone will take that brine and they're gonna throw it in the fridge for a few hours. They need to bring it down in temperature. The reason being, if you put your meat into that warm water, you're gonna breed bacteria. You don't wanna do that. So in this case, what I did is I put in a bunch of ice and I brought it down, and then finally I brought it down to like 39 degrees, perfect temperature to get your meat in there, and then I stuck it in my beer fridge so it was extra cold overnight. The one thing you're gonna note here is that with adding so much ice, my ratio of salt to water is off a little bit. Now, I don't really care about that for this particular cook because again, I know it's gonna be a super juicy cook. I just wanted to get some salt in there, so I was fine leaving it alone. Traditionally, when you do brine, you wanna keep your ratios as they are. So just to share that with you, 12 hours ago, this was done, and here we are, we've got our wings. Now what we're gonna do here is we're gonna put them on a rack, let them drain off a little bit. All right, so we're gonna put this on the smoker. So ideally you want gaps between your meat. I'm cutting it close here, but I don't wanna go get another rack just for a couple wings. And we're just gonna squeeze them on there. Now traditionally, when you're smoking wings, you don't want wet skin, right? What happens is you end up with a rubbery skin that is never gonna get crispy. Because we're doing so many steps here, I don't care about the moisture. The moisture is actually gonna help attract some smoke, and that's what we're looking for next. So we've been smoking the wings for exactly 1 hour. It's time to introduce you to one of the key secrets of this method. That is this guy, right? So this is a pressure cooker. This is a higher end pressure cooker. These guys are designed for canning, and the great thing about this company is that they make them from a small size all the way up to a huge size. So you can get different sizes. Now you do not need to get one like this. We're cooking at like 370. And one of the problems with the more inexpensive pressure cookers is that they have a gasket here that breaks down over time due to the high temperatures. So this seals, there's no gasket here, it's metal on metal. You actually put a little oil on here and we lock it down, and then we go opposite ends. So we get that tight, we go opposite ends, and then we do this until we get this tight, right? And then inside, we've got our weight. And it tells you this is 5, 10, or 15 pounds. We're gonna be using 10 pounds of pressure. So if you needed less pressure for something else, you just turn it over and you've got 5 pounds, and then you can go up to 15 pounds. Now, you're gonna have to Google this. I don't know the exact science behind it, but as you get away from sea level, which I'm very, very close to, you have to add more pressure. So if you're, I don't know, a couple thousand feet above sea level, you might have to go up to 15 pounds. You'll have to experiment on that. I can't do that testing for you because I don't live there. One of the other things we're doing here is we're actually gonna use Crisco vegetable shortening here, right? Now it says vegetable shortening, but the first ingredients on this is soybean oil. And then we go to palm oil, 2 different types of palm oil. We're using this for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's gonna give our chicken great flavor. Number 2, it's easy to deal with, right? It's solid when it's cold. So once it cools down, you can strain it, take all the piece of chicken, everything out, whatever you're frying, strain it out, and then you can let it cool all the way down, and then you could store it in a container. You could even leave it in this, but it's gonna be solid so you can move it around without having to worry about spilling it. And when your oil finally gets to the point where you wanna get rid of it, it's solid, you just throw it in the garbage and away you go. So you can use other oils, but I've done a bunch of testing and this works great for what we're doing. You need to understand one thing here though. It says on this container, big red warning label right in front of my face. So I'll show you to this on the camera right here, but it says warning, shortening will catch fire if overheated. We're not gonna overheat it. We're only gonna go to 370, but what we are gonna do is we're gonna heat this up slowly. I'm gonna scoop all this in, I'll show you how we do it, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring it up to temperature slowly. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but we don't want it super, super hot and blowing past our temperature. So let's get this warmed up and I'll show you how we do that. So the big thing here is that what we wanna do is we want to take our knobs off here. There is an arrow here, so what happens is that locks, right? We've got our initial lock there, and then we start to put things up. So we're gonna open this. Now right away, put these up. The one thing I noticed is that as this is heating up, our heat comes over here and these get a little warm. So put them up so you don't have to worry about that. That's the only little frustration with this one. I'm not affiliated with this company whatsoever. I wanted a high quality one and this is what I came up with. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn our stove on and I'm gonna put it on about medium. All right, then we're gonna start scooping all of our shortening in. And right away, I'm gonna tell you, do not go above half oil. I don't know how high you can actually go, but most people when they pressure fry, they don't use a ton of oil unless you're doing it commercially, which I actually did. Go look at someone that was doing it commercially to try and figure out this method. But you're probably gonna use, I have some left over, so you're gonna use a whole container, maybe a container and a half, depending on how many wings you're doing. Now we'll just wait for it to come up to temperature. So our wings have smoked for 1 hour and 15 minutes. As you can see, nothing's really happened to them. You can't even tell. In fact, they're actually colder than the fridge because it's a balmy 24 degrees outside Fahrenheit. So we're gonna let them warm up a little bit while our oil warms up, and then we'll talk about our first round of pressure frying. So now we're checking the temperature of our oil every couple of minutes, right? Pay attention to it. It's gonna start to come up fairly quick. Right now, we're sitting around 270, so we're gonna put the chicken in at exactly 370. So don't walk away. We gotta deal with one thing here. One thing that people often overlook when they're doing wings is that the drums are gonna cook quicker than the flats, right? Not by much, but a little bit. But if you're making the perfect wing, you gotta take that into consideration. So we're gonna separate them out. Now, a very important step to this is flour. I want you to look at how much I'm putting on here. So, quick tip here, do not rush and make sure that you seal your Ziploc bag up properly. This is how I know you have to do that. Unbelievable. So yeah, so I just had to get changed real quick. What a mess that made real quick. The great thing is I only lost 1 drum, so I'm pretty happy about that. Oh man. But as you can see, The secret here is there is not a lot of flour at all on these. Do not flour them up. You don't need them. You will end up with way too crispy of a skin, and trust me, you don't want it that crispy. Or it won't even, it's not that it will be crispy, it's gonna be crispy no matter what, it'll be thick. All right, and we don't need that for this cooking method. You can experiment with more flour later if you want, but I've already done all the testing. Let's get our flats in here. And again, not too much flour. A heaping tablespoon for the flats should be more than enough. Let's see. These ones have got just a little bit more flour on them, but if I'm just gonna bounce some of it off. Our oil is at 370. Let's get to cooking. And we're gonna get our lid on here right away. I'm gonna go opposites. I can already hear the pressure start to be building up. Oh, you know what? I forgot to put some oil on this, hold on. There we go, opposites. 10 pounds of pressure. So what's gonna happen here is you can see the gauges come up to 10. This is gonna start to rock back and forth, so we know we've achieved pressure, and from the moment that starts, we're only gonna go 4 minutes for the flats. Take a little piece of paper towel, some of the water coming out. And there we go, 4 minutes from now. It's been exactly 4 minutes. We turn off our stove, and we need to get this pressure out of here before we can open it. What I'll do is I'll just take, it's hot, like look. There we go. We're at 0. And what we'll do here, get some oven mitts. This is gonna be hot still. You're still gonna have steam coming out of here, okay? All right, now what we'll do is we'll lift this off. Some of our wings, you can see they have a spot that was above the oil a little bit, so we're just gonna turn those around a little bit, and we'll grab some of the ones that are completely, well, as cooked as they're gonna be. They're not gonna be what you're used to seeing yet. Don't worry about that. I'm just trying to get an initial cook on these guys. Now remember, our temperature is still quite high here, 250. So right away, we're gonna turn our stove back on, and we're gonna start to bring that back up to 370 to get ready for our drums. So once our oil came up to 370, we put in our drums one by one, tried to spread them out so we had a little bit of room. We put a little bit of oil across our rim again, and then we put on our lid, tightening up opposite corners. And then we put on our 10 pounds of pressure, and we let that go for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, we turned off the temperature, used my thermometer to lift up that weight, took out the moisture, drained them, and here we are. Now, are they done yet? No. These are going in the fridge for overnight. So right about now, let me see if I can read your mind. You're probably wondering why we're doing all this, and do I have to do this many steps? I will tell you at the end how to do this all in one day. But if I'm gonna make the claim of making the best smoked wing on the internet, I better take all the steps, right? So if you've ever had fresh cut French fries, they're always twice cooked. We're doing the exact same process here. These are almost done. We staggered them a little bit so they're gonna finish at the same temperature. But why are we pressure frying? And why are we starting at 370? So traditionally when you do a standard open fry in a deep fryer, you're gonna fry chicken 350 to 375. What we're doing is we're going up to 370, and then we're putting in the cold chicken, and it's dropping our temperature right down, right? I'm keeping the heat on to kind of bring it back up. But when you pressure fry, what it does is it raises the boiling temperature of water from 212 to over 240. What happens? Now we end up with a much more juicier piece of meat. That's why I wasn't worried too much about the brine. I just want a little salt in there. Additionally, what happens is all that pressure actually keeps out some of the oil. So this is actually, believe it or not, it is healthier than traditional deep frying. And what we're doing when you do a pressure fry is your target temperature is really between about 280, 285 to 310. It's a much lower range because of the pressures up in that temperature, and we're gonna end up turning out a phenomenally crispy but super juicy chicken when we're done. Now we'll put these in the fridge overnight and I'll see you tomorrow. So it's the next day and it's officially wing day. So what I did yesterday afternoon, once these were done, I left them on the cooling rack, then I threw them in the fridge for a couple hours until I knew they were cold. Then I just put them on a plate to save room, covered them in saran wrap, and here's what they look like. Not very appealing at this moment in time, but don't worry, in another 5 minutes, these are gonna look phenomenal. So our oil's up to temperature, same process as yesterday. We bring it up to 370, then we put them in there. We're gonna do 2 batches, just like 45 wings here. So I'm gonna split them in 2, and we're gonna cook them for 5 minutes, then turn down the temperature, let out the pressure, get them out of there, and then we'll throw in the next batch, and I'll show you what they look like when they're done. So both batches are done. These guys, I've got to cool off for a little bit, but let me just show you what we're looking at here. I mean, that is insane. Like, I'm just barely touching it. Great color, amazing crunch. It's almost like there's a very, very thin batter on them, but there's no batter. We just put a tiny bit of flour on there. It's all skin. It's all in the method, and it just makes an amazing crunch to them. What I'm gonna do now is we're gonna put some sauce on them. Now, don't do a rookie mistake here, all right? Here's my sauce. You work so hard on these wings, I warm this up. Don't put sauce right out of the fridge on them. It's cold, obviously, so I'm going to keep out this guy. This guy, it's good, it's got my name on it. Ooh, still hot. Put some sauce on the rest. I'm a saucy kind of guy. And you know, if you're doing a larger batch, the one thing I noticed is that on the second cook, you can actually put more in there. I didn't make a batch, and all my testing, I just made a single serving size because I only wanted enough for me to eat. But I'm gonna share these ones. And on the second fry, you can put a lot more in. And if you wanna keep them warm, all you gotta do is put them in the oven. You know, set your oven at 200. Keep them warm while you're doing a couple batches. And if you want to learn more about the American pressure cooker, I'll put a link down below. They've got different sizes and everything. We need a little bit more sauce. Like I said, not sponsored, but I wanted one that would just be around for a while, and I could also do some canning with. And you can make yourself a buffalo sauce, whatever you want. So we get the rest of these guys in here. And there we have it. We'll put these guys here just in case someone wants one without sauce. I mean, I don't know why you would do that, but let me just dig in right here. Gotta try one of each. Those, my friends, are phenomenal. Everything I promised you, I guarantee you, these ones are gonna blow your mind. Now, I promised you, if you wanna do this in one day, I'd tell you how, super easy. You can skip the the wet brining process altogether. In all my testing, I did not wet brine because I was making this video, I just went the extra mile. The double cook does add a lot to it, but you can certainly do these in one day. I've tried them both ways, and even in one day, they are phenomenal. Still, probably better than you've had or made yourself. And all you can do is you're gonna cold smoke them for an hour to an hour and a half. You could go up to an hour and a half, I think, and it wouldn't hurt them. Then what you do is you get your pressure cooker, you put your Crisco in there, you bring it up to 370, just like we did here, put your chicken in there, and then close it up, put your 10-pound weight on there, depending on your elevation, and then as soon as it comes up to 10 pounds and the weight starts to move, set your timer for 10 minutes. At the 5-minute mark, very, very critical. You're at medium heat, turn it down to low because you're gonna blow past the temperature and you don't wanna do that when you're pressure frying. So turn it down to low just to keep the heat up and go for another 4 minutes. Then turn that heat off for the last minute. As soon as you hit the 10-minute mark, then start to release that pressure on your weight. And then once it comes down to 0, it's still gonna feel like there's pressure in there because there is a little bit of pressure in there. You can use an oven mitt and take off the weight and it will still, you saw it in the videos, it's still going, but it's perfectly fine to start to open. Once you open it and just move the lid, all the pressure is gone, and then you get them out there very quickly. Now, preferably when you drain them, I would put them on a wired rack, but I'm making a sausage video at the same time, and all my wired racks are in my other fridge. If you want to learn how to make sweet Italian sausages stuffed with mozzarella, subscribe below. That'll be coming out soon. So I just put them on some paper towel. Then same old process. If you don't want to go through this process and you're still a chicken wing lover like me, I got you covered. You can check out this video right here. This is my #1 method for doing chicken wings on the Yodit pellet smoker. I spent over a year. I've done tons of videos on it. This is the #1 method. And for Kamado Joe users, I've got one right here. Now this is my baseline cook. It's only my first or second wings. I'm working on making them better, but it's a good starting point. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. While you're down there, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.